New York Times reporter Ested Hendren spent 8 months working on this profile on Kamala Harris, the vice president, and it shines some light on why she has remained so profoundly unpopular throughout her time in office as VP. Now, not only is she unpopular, she has a historically low approval rating. This year, an NBC News poll found that 49% of voters have an unfavorable view of Harris, with the lowest net negative rating for a vice president since the poll began in 1989. And according to the report, those close to Harris are all too aware of this as a massive problem. In interviews with more than 75 people in the vice president's orbit, there is little agreement about Harris at all, except an acknowledgement that she has a public perception problem, a self-fulfilling spiral of bad press and bad polls, compounded by the realities of racism and sexism. Now, I think what is not helping her cause here is how dismissive she is about the situation. It seems like everyone around her is very aware of how much of a problem this is, whereas she is either delusional about it or is in denial about it. I don't know. So this report repeatedly points out that in order to improve her numbers, okay, Harris might have to actually, explain her accomplishments to the American people, but she doesn't feel that she needs to do that. It's almost as if she feels like it's beneath her or that she doesn't need to explain herself. It's almost as if she doesn't understand what politics are or how politics work. So the reporter here describes Harris as a figure who is fundamentally uncomfortable with having to make an affirmative case for herself to the public. Why are you in politics? What are you doing? She feels that she shouldn't have to. Here's a telling exchange that the reporter had with Harris during an interview in Chicago specifically. So, has there been enough substance that the administration has put on its inequality agenda? I asked, pointing out that black turnout had softened for Democrats in the 2022 midterms. Has that promise made to black communities been kept? So that was the question Hendren asks of Harris. Harris launched into a recitation of talking points: the amount of money the administration has invested in historically black colleges and universities, how the capped price on insulin would help black seniors, the new federal restrictions on no-knock entries and chokeholds by the police, Housing Secretary Marcia Fudge's work on affordable housing. What's the disconnect then between all that and it translating to more black votes? I asked, pressing further. Harris refused to entertain the scenario. Instead, she had a question for me. Why don't you talk to me after 2024?
Because it'll be too late by then, and Donald Trump will be president again, thanks to the great incompetence of you and Joe Biden. You're supposed to make a case for yourself, for your administration, for your president, for your party. You're supposed to fight for your voters. Why is black voter turnout softened in 2022? It's not a great mystery. Everybody knows it. You guys didn't deliver on voting rights. You said to everybody you would give them voting rights, and you made it a giant issue. You made it a giant issue in Georgia. You made it a giant issue in the 2020 election. And I was thrilled that you did it. And I remember a while back, they called it HR 1, most important bill. And that's why they put it as the first bill. This was a couple of Congresses ago. And then that eventually was the voting rights bill they were gonna vote on. And then they're like, oh yeah, but we wouldn't wanna upset the parliamentarian, and the filibuster is more important. Now we'll lift the filibuster to make sure the stock market's okay on the debt ceiling issue. But for you guys, no, we're not gonna lift it. You're just not important enough, right? That's what your actions said. So now you could talk about, Marcia Fudge did this and we helped historically black colleges and universities. That's great. But did that resonate with all African Americans in the country? Apparently not. Apparently not. She never has any good answers. Maybe it's because there are no good answers, but that's super depressing. I mean, there's no winning here. Either you don't have good answers or you can't make your own case. And when we're asking you, hey, the other guy is awful, there's a monster at the door, can you please tell us, forget us, tell the American people why it should be you and not the monster? And she says, let's talk after the election.
It's just so ridiculous. And she cut that interview short, by the way. So this interview happened after she had given a speech for the Everytown gun safety event. And the reporter asks her, when someone asks, what does Vice President Kamala Harris bring to the ticket? What is that clear answer? I asked. Harris's team made clear it would be my final question. Were you in this room of 2,000 people? Harris asked. I nodded. Did you see them cheering and standing? Yes. That's what I say. She stood up and walked out of the room.
Now, this is ridiculous, totally ridiculous. So guys, first of all, how elitist does that sound? They clapped for me, and that is good enough. No, it's not good enough. They were being polite. You're the Vice President of the United States. You're the second most important person in the Democratic Party. You walked in a room, of course they're gonna applaud. What do you think, right? That doesn't prove anything. She's asking you, what are you going to do? I'm going to receive a fake applause is the worst answer you could possibly give. And look at how sensitive she sounds. She sounds like, honestly, it's a Trump move to get that sensitive. You're in politics. You are rerunning for vice. I think you are you? You're rerunning for vice president. That is when you make your case. You don't run screaming out of the room when a reporter asks you what I think is an incredibly benign question.
No, but Cenk, she's entitled to the position. She's entitled to it. That's the attitude that you get, like the sense that you get about her attitude as you read this lengthy piece. And there, by the way, you talk about forced applause. Oh, I got an anecdote about that. In fact, the reporter in the New York Times has an anecdote about that. So it's in regard to her speech at the Munich Security Conference. And apparently her speech didn't go over so well. In fact, it wasn't getting the applause that she was expecting. There's specific lines that are written with the expectation that the audience is either gonna applaud or enjoy it. Harris's stilted delivery of her speech caused the international audience to miss certain applause lines. Her chief of staff, seated in the front row, tried to start some clapping herself, but the members of the Biden administration in the audience only tepidly joined her efforts. I mean, Jesus.
I don't know what happened to Kamala Harris. What happened to that?
What happened to the Democratic Party, Cenk? What happened to the Democratic Party? Okay, you have Democratic voters in major blue cities across the country flipping out right now because they were fighting for scraps. They were fighting for more public school funding, more housing, things that they desperately need. But then they got flooded by a migrant crisis. And what has the Democratic Party on the federal level done for them? What have they done for them?
Not
we allocated a total of $1 billion for every single city that is dealing with this crisis. And they think that's enough? We're talking about shelter, we're talking about food, we're talking about taking care of tens of thousands of people.
So look, I know that the Democratic Party leadership does not see it this way, but we're trying to help you. I know that you, in the elitist world, any critique is unacceptable and a great violation of your beloved etiquette. But here, let me be constructive. So when they ask you, what did you do for black folks? Now, what would have been a great answer is if you guys had actually done voting rights, that would have been terrific, right? But Biden created 14 million jobs in the first 3 years. That is more than twice what Donald Trump created in his first 3 years pre-COVID. So that's a great record. A lot of those jobs were African Americans. Why don't you figure out how many were African Americans? Let's say that you created 1.2 million jobs for African Americans. It's not my job to figure it out, okay? And you should be bragging about that every single day until I'm seeing it on the air because it's in the news nonstop, right? And figure out how many jobs you created for, but I mean, you're being asked about African Americans, so answer that. But then brag about the whole 14 million, the whole 14 million. You can't even do that? God, come on, man. Okay, so you've got weaknesses. You've got the administration has weaknesses, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden has massive weaknesses, but you have some strengths. Lean into your strength. Can you at least the bare minimum of politics? Lean into your strengths, say them over and over and over again. I've now talked about how much Biden did a great job on jobs, way more than Biden has. And I don't even like the guy. Okay, so it's
no joke. No joke.
No joke. He's too old. I don't know what she is. Anyways, guys, if you're gonna win this race and we're not gonna lose the country to a fascist, please wake up and do something.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us. Become a Young Turk.